a lecture to follow. So anyway, so we are online. Let me go ahead and throw this up here. Eventually, if this works well, there may be an opportunity for you folks to, if you have broadband at home, to participate from home. So that'll be kind of cool. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's see, what do I want to share? Probably want to share that screen. Present to everyone. All right. So now we're looking at a screen. And we should be sharing this screen. I'm going to go into Blackboard here real quick. Oh, helps to go cocc.edu. So my hope is that while this is broadcasting and sharing my screen, that everybody is seeing what I'm seeing. The challenge is you're all here. So how do we know? Good question. So if this works really well, and we'll find out after class, that's the challenge with technology. You got to get in and try it and see if it works. If it works well, then what I will do is I'll post an invite for each day's class that you would be able to then click in and get invited through Gmail. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll post that link on Blackboard. And of course, like everything else, Microsoft technology works best in what browser? Anybody know? Internet Explorer, because it's Microsoft, right? So if we're talking Mac technology works best in what browser? Safari. So what do you think all this Google technology works best in? In Chrome. Okay. How many people use Chrome as their primary? Great. How many people use Internet Explorer? And Safari. There's our Mac users. Awesome. Okay. Firefox is an independent Mozilla browser, works cross-platform. So a lot of people use Firefox as well. So, popular ones now, definitely Firefox, Chrome, Internet Explorer is falling off a little bit. That's why we're seeing more of an integration of it into the Windows operating system. Okay. So the first thing, looking at our weekly schedule, again, I mentioned that this is a brand new class. This is brand new technology. I'm looking at the schedule and we definitely have way too much material to cover. I just don't feel like I can give you, ample material, an ample lecture, and cover 4 modules in a week. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at rescheduling the whole thing, and I'm going to move your exam. I know you all are just going to be just devastated about this. I'm going to move your exam to the Tuesday, October 20th section. Okay. One of the main reasons for that is I think what we're probably going to do is skip lesson 6. We'll move it to Tuesday of next week, and we'll just see how far we get today, and then we'll look at the rest of it on Thursday. On Thursday, that'll be a little bit challenge for the online folks. I'll probably have to do a separate video because I've got a bunch of equipment that we're going to take apart and look at. Okay, so we're going to introduce topics today, and we're going to do a hands-on exercise on Thursday to sort of seal that in. So, and the reason being, I want to spend some time on classifying and evaluating computers. Yes?
So just to double check, the exam's going to be on Tuesday, October 20th?
It will be on Tuesday, October 20th, and this schedule will change. You'll note that, and I will communicate that to both classes. Cool. Yes?
That's pertaining to the first exam for the class?
Yep. Module 1 exam will be Tuesday, October 20th. Okay? Yes?
I have one thing about the homework.
Mm-hmm.
It says the assignment is not due Wednesday, but I'm pretty sure you meant to say it's due
Oh,
Wednesday.
I said in the video, instead of Monday, I extended it 2 days. So, yeah, that homework.
What it says is the assignment is not due Wednesday.
Oh, I meant to say not due Monday. So, yeah, it is due Wednesday. I'll change that. Thank you. So, a lot of stuff going on. Let's talk about this week's assignment. Okay. So there is no assignment for operating system customization. We'll talk about that briefly. The challenge with that is we're all using different operating systems now, but we'll look at what the key components there are. We'll look at that today. But computer hardware is really where you're going to focus this week. Okay. So if you notice, there's a homework assignment in there. So talking about the homework assignment for computer hardware. Since we have not covered Microsoft Word, I've given you this template. I'm going to click on it. I'll download it and we'll look at it. But basically, it says in this assignment, you'll be creating a picture study guide of components and a brief college level description of the component, its function and purpose. So in Microsoft Word 2013, which you should have already downloaded, use the template provided. To type your name at the top, we'll see that. So basically, instead of explaining, just repeating what's there, let's go in and actually do it. So what we have is a template that I've provided. Let's go, Microsoft Word. Pretty obvious, you're going to type your name here, right? Everybody figured that out, hopefully. And then if you notice, there is a table of terms. So what you're going to do is use, I would suggest maybe using using a browser like Google Chrome. Why can't I? There we go. I'll go into Google here. And I'm going to just type in there QWERTY keyboard. So I'm looking up the terms. I don't mind if you use Wikipedia. Okay. What I don't want you doing is copying and pasting definitions. I want in your own words, what the heck is a QWERTY keyboard? Okay. Does that make sense? So what you'll do is you'll go over to images. Okay, you can find a nice image, whatever you'd like. You can right click, copy image. I suggest not if you notice, if I explode the image, I get the bigger image. I suggest just working off of these little images here. So if I right click this image and, copy the image, I can come back into my Word document. Okay, I'll close that and simply paste it in. I may have to open up I am going to have to now open up. It used to be you could copy these little images. That's going to stink. Copy image. Paste. Thank you. Great. Well, then I'm just going to size it. So I'll just size that image down like that. And then I'm going to provide a definition of QWERTY keyboard. Notice in the assignment, it says a college level definition. Okay. So this would not fly. Thing used to enter stuff into the computer. So what am I looking for? First of all, I'm not looking for the complete history of the QWERTY keyboard, but you might mention, why is it referred to as the QWERTY keyboard? Okay. It is a primary input device still today, right? To do what? Enter information or data or to communicate with the computer. Okay? Yes.
So is this the homework that's going to be due on Wednesday?
This will be nope. This is the homework that's due next week. So trackball, optical mouse, all in one. So if we look at the weekly schedule, we'll see that chapter 5 lists October 12th. Yeah. Secure digital, micro SD card. So there's a difference between a standard SD and a micro SD. So what I would expect to see is an image that says micro. Okay. What else am I looking for here? Well, we've talked about the fact that a lot of these storage devices are either primary or secondary, right? So if it's secondary storage or secondary memory, as we might call it, I expect it to say that. The other thing might be storage. Now, some of these, like a micro SD card, we can get in, standard gigs, 8 gig, 32 gig, so just give me some examples of the storage size. Okay. So if we're talking about a hard drive today, if any of you have purchased a computer lately, what size hard drive do you tend to get? What? 500 gigs or bigger. So on a hard drive, you might say, you know, standard size is 500 gigs to 1,000, you know, gigs or a terabyte, right? Does that make sense? So some modern terminology here. Smartphone. Give me your picture of your favorite smartphone. How many people have smartphones? Imagine that. So these are the terminologies. You'll just, again, give a definition. Something like trackball is not just a thing we use to move the cursor around the screen. Okay, so maybe how does a trackball work, or how does an optical mouse work? We'll talk about that today. So you'll have more information on these definitions through class on Thursday. Cool? Any questions on the homework? So that's your homework assignment this week. Thursday, you can expect a little quiz on 1 and 2. Okay. So someone emailed and said, okay, you know, there's a ton of stuff here. There's a ton of reading. Where are the exam questions going to come from? Well, clearly on, you know, like file management, we didn't discuss it much in class, right? So you wouldn't expect to see much on file management. Okay. Where you will expect to see things is things like, you know, we talked about operating systems. We talked about applications, you know, what the heck a word processor is, what a spreadsheet is, those kind of things. You know, you'll be expected to know the general definitions for module 1. And then of course we'll get to hands-on stuff. Okay. So once this is done, if we go back into Blackboard, you'll simply use the link at the top, like it says, click the red title above to upload your assignment. Again, if you have questions on how to do that, go back into the Getting Started section. There's a video for that. All right. And I will create another quick instructional video outside of the lecture today, discussing how to do the assignment in case there's any additional questions. Are we good? Any questions before we jump into some lecture? Yes.
Is there any, if you attach something to Blackboard, is there any way to reattach?
To reattach, no. So that's the thing. Once, unfortunately, you get one time to submit. So you have to know that your homework is done and you're ready to attach it. So what happens if you attach something, you get a little premature and you need to reattach? How might you get me your homework at that point? Email. So if you attach something and it's wrong, email me the corrected assignment. Let me know that the one in Blackboard is incorrect. I'm not going to make you go through the process. The process of me detaching the document so you can retouch is just a pain. So email it to me. I flag it as needed to be graded, stick it in the needed to be graded. And as I grade all the assignments, I'll just take yours from email. Okay. But what I would prefer is that you know, make sure your assignment gets uploaded correctly into Blackboard. Great question. Any other questions? Okay. So we're going to just briefly talk about operating system customization. So we'll look at the PowerPoint for that. Now, if you notice, you've got a lot more stuff going on here. So let's just talk about this. The learning objectives, things we're going to, you know, talk about. Lecture slides. So you have them both. A student had asked, hey, can I, you know, get the PDF? So it was pretty easy for me to give you both formats. So you have both the PowerPoint and the PDF. You should have Office by now, so you should be able to work with that. I did find out, folks, that it sounds like your free download of Office will remain Office 2013 through this year, okay? Because we're teaching so many classes that relate to 2013, and the new textbooks and the new learning materials haven't come out for 2016. So when you download that, you will get 2013 is my understanding. So key terminology. So if you want to, you can review the key terminology. Again, the only thing required, you know, is graded assignments. But is that enough to do well? No, you need to be looking at this material. That's why it's provided. Okay. Do you need to learn and master every term? No. Okay. But you should have an understanding. Also in the SAM, so notice this does say optional. Giving you some optional training. SAM has some videos, some of which are pretty good. some of which, if you've looked at them, are pretty darn cheesy. Okay, so more, more opportunity there to learn. If you're not a reader and you're not going to go through and be reading the, and skimming and looking at the textbook, you definitely need to get on SAM. You need to understand what these components are. What is RAM? What is ROM? What is a CDR? What is a CDRW? What's the capacity? Things like that. Okay. Again, though, on the exam, I'm not going to get into real technical details. But one thing that I would point out, we spent a lot of time on binary, correct? At least to 4 bits. So understanding how to add up at least 4 bits, you can expect to see some questions on the exam for that. Okay. Just be happy you don't have to process that through a processor. Okay. It's boring stuff anyway. Most of you don't need to understand that. So, there's the information. So let's go ahead and we'll talk basically overview of the idea of operating system customization. Now this has changed. The presentation goes through Windows 8. The challenge is here on campus, we still are using Windows 7. Most likely the college is going to do a very smart thing and skip Windows 8 altogether. So the next upgrade they do to all these computers will most likely be Windows 10, which will be great. So I will do, I'll either find or do some basic instructional videos. How many people have Windows 8? Are using Windows 8? So what is everyone else using? Windows 10? How many Windows 10 then? All right, so we did some upgrades. And then we've got some Mac users. Anybody still using XP? Want to admit that they still use XP? No? Vista? Vista. All right. Cool. Solid little operating system. Why upgrade? It works, right? Yeah. So if you're not, here's that great sort of starting to talk about that digital divide. How many of you really need Windows 10? Well, if you're a CIS major, you definitely should be on the latest. My students in the advanced classes, they need to be using the latest and greatest. They should be using the Office 2016. Why? Because they're the ones that are going to support all of you in your professional careers. So they need to be on that. So anyway, customizing the operating system, you can go through the words to know. As we talk about, changing the start screen and background, customizing it. Yes, we can go in here, right click, and we can personalize. And we can change things like the desktop background. We can go to themes and apply themes. Ooh, pretty, right? Here's the challenge with this. When we start creating, have y'all seen the one where it's the fish tank and the fish are moving in the back, or you've downloaded a free theme from the internet? Now, why did I say it so sarcastically? Anybody want to take a guess? Huh? It's most likely not free. Now, what that means is that you're going to get something with it, right? So when I get that, beautiful screen that I like and cool things are happening, most likely there might be some tracking software or malware. People don't tend to make things for free out of the graciousness of their heart, right? Angry Birds. Do y'all remember that game? Do y'all know how much money the programmer of Angry Birds was making a day on average? How much was it to download Angry Birds and get it on your phone or your tablet? Free? In some cases it was. Then if you wanted the modules, a bit whopping 99 cents, right? He's making upwards of 50 grand a day. And then people started bugging him. Oh, you should change this. You should do that. So what did he do? He pulled the game completely. He just said, I'm done. Y'all just want too much. Leave me alone. As we change these, so yeah, we need to think about free. We need to think about, is it worthwhile downloading? What is it going to bring in our computer? And there's also the fact that these themes versus simply having a background, of say a solid color, do we want a picture? Here's the Windows desktop backgrounds. Can we trust the ones that come with the computer? We can. So if you find something you like, great. You know, maybe you're one of those folks that just says, you know what, I don't want anything fancy. I just want a nice black screen. Is this using more resources than things moving around and colors? No, it's using less. So suddenly I'm not using system processor. I'm not using memory, you know, to have things move around. Okay. There's also the fact that on your smartphones, you all have seen the active desktops for smartphones. Like Android has a bubble one, right? You turn it on and the bubbles, you know, work and this and that. If you haven't experienced one of those, go ahead and turn one on one morning and leave it on for the day and see what happens to your battery consumption, right? It quickly goes away. And it's the same thing on phones. So how many people have the Android phone? How many people have Android? Raise your hand if you have Android. Raise it high so I can see. That's kind of interesting because the market share now is about 70% of all users have Android. iPhone's falling off. Anybody remember BlackBerry? Yeah, BlackBerry right now is trying to figure out how they can create a smartphone because they're losing, you know, they have like less than 2% of market share. So one of the things we do with these phones is if we click in the lower left-hand corner, it shows all the applications I have open. If I close those, what aren't they using? They're not using my memory, which means the battery's not having to power that memory to have those applications running. It's the same thing here, okay? So we need to, you know, think about that idea of, you know, do we really want to change our background? Do we really want to customize things? Now, we know here on campus, let's talk about these icons. First of all, what area is this called? Anybody know? Desktop. We call this the desktop. So if we think about a desktop as in ye old days when our parents actually went to work and they had a desk, right? And it was messy. That's how they filed things, right? Well, one of the challenges here is, what is it that we put on the desktop? Well, really, that's entirely up to you. However, here on the campus, if I come in here and right click and I say, give me a new Microsoft Word document, and this is my final essay for WR121, writing 121. Where is that file stored? It's on my desktop. Now, we all know, and we've talked about this, is this a good idea with the computers on campus? No. Because as soon as this computer restarts, it goes back to an original image. So this file will be where? Gone. It's history. Okay? Now, for you all, this may be something that you practice because the desktop tends to be items that we are working on. Okay? However, if your backup strategy is to go into your library here, you know, and, you know, right click and copy your My Documents and then put in a thumb drive and right click and paste, and that's your backup strategy, are you backing up things that are kept on the desktop? No. So the more things we keep on the desktop, the worse we can get, right? So a good practice is definitely to use documents. Now, in old operating systems, the My Documents encompass things like music and pictures. But again, today, if I right-click copy or drag and copy this over to an external hard drive, for example, am I backing up my music? Am I backing up my pictures? No. So I want to make sure I'm backing all of this stuff up. Now, the best way to back up a computer is actually to have a piece of software and have enough external disk space to go in and say, back up my whole computer. And that way, if you needed to restore it, you could. Okay. There's also the fact of this idea of OneDrive. What is OneDrive? It's cloud storage. Okay. Similar to Google Drive. So I use a lot of Google Drive. It is cloud storage. What's the advantage? If I put all of my documents in the cloud, Do I care if my computer really, truly put everything I do, save it to the cloud? Do I care if my computer hard drive fails? No, because I could go to any computer, access, say, my Google Drive account or my OneDrive account, and get all that data back. And it's astonishing how much storage space OneDrive is giving folks. If you go, I think students have less space, but if you go buy a retail copy of Office 365, you get a terabyte of storage space. Now, how many people know how much storage space they use on their computer? Anybody know? Anybody ever done this? You go out, you right click on the C drive of your computer and you go to properties. And you see how much space is being used on this computer. 71.1 gig. Total capacity, if you notice, is about a half a terabyte, 500 gigs. That's a lot of space, isn't it? So 71 gigs is being used, and we know that these computers replenish themselves or become a base system every day, right? So if you're wondering how much space you have left and what happens when we run out of space, we're in trouble. So let's get back to sort of a little bit of file management here. I have this file here, and if that's not the best practice, I'm going to go ahead and snap this over here, okay? And I will go into my documents, and I'm going to go ahead and move this over here. So I'm going to just right-click and move. So now here's my final essay. What is a good way, if I'm going to be working on this for the next week or two, what's a good way to where I don't have to go in and click on Start or click on File Explorer, go to my documents, and double-click the file? What can I put on the desktop? A shortcut. Everybody agree? So something that I use a lot, instead of having it stored on the desktop, all I do is right-click, drag it, and I'll say Create Shortcut. Now, how do I know that that is a shortcut? Besides the fact that it says shortcut. If I click on something else, now it doesn't say shortcut, but there's an indicator, the arrow. So the arrow lets me know the difference between a file I'm storing on my desktop and a shortcut. So when I click on this, what's it going to actually open? It's going to open this file, right? So that's a great way to do it. So at home, I have some things I work on all the time. I have a shortcut to my budget. Now, one of the things that Windows 10 is going to bring in, has brought in, is the same idea as our smartphones, in the fact that we can have multiple areas or multiple desktops, okay? So the idea with Windows 10 is by having multiple desktops, for my computer at home, I have a personal desktop and a work desktop. So shortcuts related to work, programs that shortcuts for programs, etc., I can put here. Now, I tend to, I don't want to say judge, but I guess it is. You know, if you walk into someone's office and their desk is just a mess, they got piles of paper stacking up, any chance you might judge that person? It happens. It's even easier to happen on a computer because it's so easy to save things. I like to have a clean desktop and shortcuts to things that I use often. Okay. Also, in a corporate environment, they're going to limit, just like we do here on campus. Has anybody ever hit their limit of how much they can store in their My Documents folder? Has anybody hit that limit yet? I think it's only like 256 meg that you all get. That's it. So when you hit that limit, you'll be going out to that cloud storage, you know, and making use of that OneDrive. Okay. In corporate environments, we do that so that you don't bring in your 100 gigabytes of music that you want to listen to and put it on my computer. Because if you're putting it on my computer, then I'm responsible for backing it up. Does that make sense? So changing backgrounds, you know, entirely up to you if you want to do it. You know, looking at, let me go F5 here real quick. There we go. Oh, should have gone F5. Shift F5. By the way, Shift F5 will take you to the screen that you were active on the left-hand side of PowerPoint. Okay. So PC settings, you know, access 9 categories. So the PC, the devices, accounts. Again, Microsoft now, you know, SkyDrive, OneDrive, it's the same thing. Because we're talking Microsoft, they're going to implement that into the operating system. They want you to use that, right? Because if you're storing things on OneDrive or SkyDrive, you're going to go to computers that have the, you know, make it easy to access. What is Apple's solution? What does Apple have? iCloud. Everything's I with Apple, right? Individualized, iCloud. You know, where do you store your music? iCloud. You know, where's the backup? iCloud. Where are your files? iCloud. You know, with the idea that you can then go to your other Apple devices and get to your files and folders. Okay. Privacy, network, you know, time, language. We'll look at some of these. Okay. So using the PC settings, most of the time now we're dealing with computers that are touchscreen. And I know the computer I have now is the first computer that I got a touchscreen. So I was used to using the mouse. So I would use the mouse to go up and activate things. And then I found out this touchscreen thing's pretty cool. I can just reach up here and drag and get to things that I need to get to pretty quickly. Okay. Control panel, we'll definitely take a look at the control panel. Personalizing the desktop, we talked about that, you know, picking a color theme, all of those things are going to take up system resources when we start doing things that move around or change. You know, maybe you have that rotating desktop. Okay. You know, regional settings. So system time is important. Okay. We need to make sure that we're in the right system time. What happens to our phones? If I go from here and I fly to New York, what automatically happens to my phone? The times change. Have y'all ever looked at your calendar when you're back there? All your appointments change to the right time. Yeah, which I always found really weird. So I had this happen the week we were off. I was on the East Coast and I started putting in appointments and putting in classes that I'm teaching. And then I came back here and they were 3 hours earlier. You know, so I was teaching a class at 6:30 in the morning. How did that happen? Well, because I entered it over there. So I just had to go in. I do everything in Google and say, by the way, this was Pacific time. Why did it pick Eastern time? Because that was the time zone I was in and my phone knew that. So, you know, regional settings, date and time is important. You know, of course, now we all don't have to worry about it now, but do y'all remember a few years ago when we actually changed daylight savings time? That was a nightmare for network administrators because the time didn't change on the day that it was expected to, that the computer system, the operating system, was programmed for. When was another time that we had problems with dates that computer systems weren't programmed for? Y2K. You know, I don't know how we developed and designed multiple operating systems for years, not thinking about the fact that computers might be around in the year 2000. But what was the worry? That if all these computers only understood 19 and not 20, what would happen? We were worried that major computer systems like power grids were going to shut down. They wouldn't know how to handle January 1st, 2000. By the way, for a lot of programmers, they made a lot of money simply going in and modifying tables that said, by the way, there's a date after December 31st, 1999. So customizing power options. Has anybody been in and customized their power options? Do we worry about this on desktops? No. Where do we worry about power options? Laptops. Yeah, because we can actually go into laptops now. And Thursday, I'll bring in my laptop. We'll look at power options for laptops. We can go in and do things like turn off the CPU or use power saving features such as sleep. Okay. So one of the things we can do is actually now, if we have a multi-core processor, which we've talked about, we can tell it when I'm on battery power, don't use all 4 cores because that takes up a lot of energy. Or shut down the monitor sooner than when you're on power. Okay. Yes.
Just kind of a random question. How often do you actually turn off your laptop?
How often do I turn off my laptop?
Yeah.
Usually I turn it on in the morning and I turn it off in the evening. The rest of the time, I close the lid, it goes into a sleep mode, and I stick it in my backpack, and it lasts all day long. Now, normally when I get here to the office, I have to remind myself not to plug in my laptop. And the reason being, laptop batteries like to be, brought down just like phone batteries. They don't like to be charged all the time. They were designed to be powered down and then charged back up, and powered down and charged back up. Battery technology, of course, has changed. Think about how long we could run an old cell phone on a battery today. Probably for a month, right? Because we didn't have quad core processors in phones. We weren't doing the things we were doing with them today. So, we could turn off the monitor. Turning off the monitor, not as big a deal with the LCD liquid crystal displays that we know today as much as it was with the old CRT monitors. And we'll talk about the difference. Because the old CRT monitors were like a television. And if you left something on the screen long enough, it actually burned into the screen. Okay. So that's where the whole idea of screensavers that moved around came from. So again, power management. A power state, a set of conditions that determines how much power the computer is using. So we can actually create different profiles. We can create a profile. Normally there's 2. One that says, when I see that I have battery, power from an outlet, I'm going to do certain things. I'm not going to shut down the monitor, perhaps. I'm not going to stop the hard drive from spinning. I'm not going to go into that sleep mode. Has anybody ever had problems with sleep mode? Yeah. The idea that you'd shut the lid on your computer and it would go to sleep, and you'd open it up, and what would happen? It wouldn't wake up. It was like a teenager. It's like, I need more sleep. And what did you end up having to do? Hit the power button, hold it in for the 8 to 10 seconds, turn it off, turn it back on. So the value of that sleep mode was nothing, right? So today, manufacturers, if you go try to buy a computer today, they're going to tell you that the battery should last about 8 hours, right? Well, what you need to look at is, what do they mean by the battery will last 8 hours? It most likely means that they've turned off multiple processors. They're using high energy conservation modes. Maybe they're not using all the memory. Maybe they're making sure that if I leave it for 10 seconds, the screen shuts off, right? What do you think happens if I decide on an airplane, oh, I've got 8 hours of battery, but I want to watch 2 movies utilizing the optical drive? You think it's going to last 8 hours? No. And normally today, some things are turned on by default and left on. One would be the wireless or the Bluetooth. Why do you think when you start up your computer, those things are turned on automatically? Because it's inconvenient, right? And if we have the battery power, just turn it on, and it makes it easy for that end user who doesn't understand how to go in and right click and start Bluetooth and make those things work. But those are all taking battery power. And if I'm sitting on an airplane for 8 hours and my Wi-Fi is turned on and I'm not using Wi-Fi, is that using battery? Of course it is. So if I turn it off, I'll get a longer, a longer use of that battery, So, sleep mode, power state Windows saves your data and system settings and temporary memory, blanks the screen, and does not perform any activities. So the hard drive tends to stop, the processor is not running, but the information, here's that idea. Remember when we talked about RAM, if we pull the power off of RAM, that all the data in RAM is gone? Well, in this case, it keeps the power on RAM so that you can open it up, or press a key and get right to work instead of having to restart the computer. Okay. Now, you all have come in this morning and you probably hit, your computer was on, correct? And you hit Control-Alt-Delete. Okay. Which is going out, getting all your information and bringing it into the local computer. Does that take a while here on campus? Yes. Does it take as long as on your computers? No. So hibernation, ideal for, mobile computers, saves your work to the hard disk, reduces the power. By saving the work to the hard disk, do we worry about if the power goes off the RAM? No, because we can get it back, right? Because a hard disk, is that primary storage or secondary storage? Secondary. Anything that stores with power off is secondary. Okay. The way I remember that is give me a second to save my data. Secondary storage. Because where am I going to save it to? A flash drive? An optical drive? Hard drive? Solid state drive? Right? So the only sort of snafu to that is cloud storage primary or secondary? I got primary or secondary. One of you is right. I appreciate the courage to. It's secondary, because when we save something out in the cloud, we're actually saving it on someone else's hard drive, someone else's server. Yeah.
What if something happens to iCloud? Is that a bad thing?
Oh, man. What happens if something happens to iCloud? Well, that would be the same thing as something happening to Google Play for me. All right, because all my music, Google allows me to store up to 10,000 songs for free up on the cloud. So my backup of all my music is Google Play, and of course I then back up my music folder. But yeah, it would be a very bad day. The reputability of Apple that day would be gone. So how does Apple make sure that doesn't happen? With redundancy. And when we talk about the web, we'll talk about data centers. Have you all read that Facebook is getting ready to build yet a third data center in Prineville? Yeah. What do you think would happen? We can get into that. There's a lot of reasons why Prineville. One is called tax breaks. Yeah. Huge tax breaks, and Prineville is onto something there. However, it's not an industry that's going to create a lot of jobs, because there's about 30 people that work there, but we can get into that when we talk about the web. The key there, though, is redundancy. I can tell you right now, if Facebook's Prineville data center went offline, you would not even know it. Because all of that data is also redundantly stored someplace else that can be referred to. But why do you think companies like Microsoft and Google and Facebook have data centers all over the country? Anybody know? Could be. Yep. It's because they actually want to put the data closest to the person using it. Okay, so if you've ever gone to a website that's hosted in China, you see it takes another couple milliseconds to get there, right? So what I want to do is put all of the folks who are using Facebook in Oregon, Idaho, Washington, Northern California, all of their data is logically stored in Prineville because it's a shorter path to get the data. Now, if Prineville goes down, maybe you're going to have to get it from Texas, but you still get it.
Like high frequency training.
It's what?
Like high frequency training.
Yeah, like high frequency training. Absolutely.
So like I can walk in and if I had a problem on Facebook, talk to actual people about it.
No.
No.
No, Facebook does not have technical support. So, setting basic power options, we'll talk about that. Requiring a password to wake up the computer, pretty important today. Okay. Security starts with the physical computer. And what I mean by that is we're making these things so small. How easy would it be if I left this and went to the restroom for it to disappear? Too easy, right? Well, it's even easier. Maybe I don't want it to disappear, but if you allow me access to the computer while you walk away from it, can I do things that you may not want me to do on your computer? Yes. So security becomes a big deal, and we'll talk about security. Creating a power plan, change the computer's sleep mode. Maybe you don't like it. On average, there's some predetermined plans in your computer, both in Mac, in Chromebook, etc. Balanced, power saver, high performance. So high performance is going to use the most energy. It's going to use all the cores. It's going to turn on those things like Wi-Fi and Bluetooth by default. Okay. So selecting power plans, and then into user accounts. So we're going to talk about user accounts. So I'm going to jump out of the presentation here. User accounts are pretty important. Now, I'm not sure how much of this I'll be able to do on this computer because they lock it down so much. But I told you we'd talk about the control panel. Now, most of the time, how do we want to view this? Most of you will see it in category view. So what's the control panel? In basic non-nerd terms, what the heck is the control panel? Where you can control your computer. Yeah, where you can control what it does, how it does it, when it does it, etc. Right? So, bless you. So the control panel is really no different than the dashboard on a car. Would you all agree? We get the information we need. We can set cruise control at 65 here pretty quick. We're all going to go to 65, So it's broken up into 8 main categories. The idea of system and security, network and internet, hardware and sound, programs. Think of that as software. So this is where we would go in, to programs, and we can see what kind of programs are on this computer. I'll make that full screen. So we can see, like today I installed Google Chrome. If you notice, it was installed on 10.6. See that? Something called Behave Plus, Blender, Cisco Packet Tracer. Ooh, there's a lot of cool programs on here. This is what's taking up all that disk space. Would you all agree? There's a lot of programs on here. SQL Server, Microsoft C++ programming language, .NET framework. Now, let's be pretty clear. If I don't know what something is, should I just right-click and uninstall it? No. Where am I going to go figure out what something is? Google it. Sophos is our antivirus. If you notice, we have some semantic PC Anywhere that allows someone to remote into this computer. Okay. A program called XAMPP, which gives us basically like a little web server on this computer so we can program web pages without being out on the internet. Okay. Just a bunch of different programs. So if our computer is getting full, one of the things we can do is come in here and say, oh, you know what? Here's this Adobe Photoshop. Well, I don't use that program, or it came as, remember we talked about bloatware on a computer? A lot of folks, when they get a computer, they'll come in here and delete things, trial software that they know they'll never use. Okay. So control panel, let's go back here. Network and internet. So we can see like the network and sharing center is going to show us our computer name. You know, this is the domain. And if you notice, we're connected to the internet. So this is someplace we can go. If we see a big red X here, that means that I'm unable to get to the internet. Okay. So I need to troubleshoot that. We'll talk about, in Unit 3, we'll talk about the idea of a network. So I'm not going to get much into this. We'll talk about IPv4 addresses. Every computer on the internet or connected to the internet essentially has a unique way to get data to and from every other computer, and that's through its IP address. So just as a basic introduction, you can think of an IP address as your house address or your apartment address, right? So if you live at 410 Southeast 6th, then there's 12 apartments there. How do I determine your apartment from someone else's? The number or a letter, right? So I can get mail directly to your door. And it's the same thing with computers. I can get packets where they need to be. So connect to a network, you know, troubleshooting problems, etc. Coming in here and creating a home group. So the idea of a home group is, how many people here have multiple computers in their home or in their apartment? So what if I wanted to share data? What I can actually do is create a thing called a home group, okay, and have a single computer that may have storage that everyone can access, okay? So this is the idea. If you're in a modern operating system, you see files, you don't see them here, but normally you'll see a folder called public, right? And that's what the default home group would share, is that public folder. So the idea is if you put something in the public folder and someone else does, we're able to see and share data, okay? So this is the idea that if we all at home want to watch movies that we've purchased legally, or listen to music that we've purchased legally, I don't have to save the music. Someone else doesn't have to save the music. I can save it in that, you know, public folder. Okay, so data that can be shared. User accounts. So I want to get into user accounts real quick. And if you notice here, I'm going to go into manage user accounts. So I get to see my account. Okay. And here I can see different user accounts that are on the computer. Now, I can't get into much detail in here, but I'm going to try to add. So there's two types of accounts here. If the domain lists your computer name, that is considered a local account. And that's what most of you are going to see on your computers, is a local account. Now, today with Microsoft, isn't it amazing? They want you to have a Microsoft account to log into your computer, right? And we'll talk more about this, but this is because in that account, you're sharing with Bill Gates and his associates information about you and your computer, okay? Like it or not. That doesn't mean, by the way, you can't create a local account to log in the computer and not have to create a Microsoft account. You can do that as well. But the idea behind a Microsoft account is the same thing behind the idea of a Google account. If I get in and sign into my Google account, how many times do I have to sign in to get to my Google Drive? Once. And to get to my Gmail, and to get to my music, and my books, and my media, I've only had to sign in one time. Y'all get that? Are y'all hearing? Pretty smart. You sign in one time. And does that make it convenient for you as a computer user? How many of you have used a computer where in a day you're signing into your bank account and this account and that account, and they're all different usernames, right? We'll look at, have y'all seen the password rant video? It's a great fun video. We should have time today to check it out. So these are local accounts on the computer. And then we have, because these accounts are part of a network, a thing called a domain. Okay, so these are domain accounts that exist. I highly, highly suggest that you consider creating accounts on your computer. Okay, how many people have other family members that use their computer? Anybody? Okay. Not as prevalent as it used to be. It used to be the house has one computer and everybody use that computer. And now they've become so cheap, you know, that, oh, well, Dad, I need a computer for high school. It's $700. Oh, you need your own computer, you know, because I don't want you using mine, you know, because I'm on it all the time or whatever the case may be. But there's different levels of computer access, okay? And we want to be able to create users that do just certain things. So by default, the idea of a user, you can be the administrator is one level of user on a computer. And what do you think the administrator is allowed to do? I'm not sure if I can get in here. We'll try it. They can change things. And what else can they do? Let's see if so here's some examples. An administrator have complete access to the computer and can make any desired change based on notification settings. Administrators may be asked to provide their password or confirmation before making changes that affect other users. So an administrator is the ruler, the king of the computer. So here's the problem with that. If you're logged in as an administrator and a program such as malware or virus wants to install, you've already given it permission because you're logged in as an administrator. The idea is you know what's good for the computer. So that virus is going to automatically install. Is that a good thing? No. So the idea is in the perfect world, which none of us live in that beautiful, perfect world, you would have a standard user account. And the reason you'd have that, standard users can use most software and change system settings that do not affect others. The idea of affecting others here, we can refer to as needing to make changes to the registry. If y'all heard about the computer registry, it's the lower level, it's the deep level. You get into the registry and make a change, you can mess up the entire computer. When you do something at the registry level, you're not only affecting you as a user of the computer, but anyone else who's using the computer. You can affect the operating system. You can get in and mess with the operating system in the registry. Most people should not be in there, okay? When a virus or malware gets into your computer, it tends to write to the registry, okay? So what you want in the perfect world is kids definitely need to be standard users. They don't need to be administrators on computers because they're going to click to download that new game. And you don't want that to be able to install and affect the registry. You want at some point for them to have to come and say, Mom, Dad, I want to install this game. All right, let's take a look at it, see if it's legit, or are we going to get some free software with it, okay? In a corporate environment, any network administrators, people that manage the network, always have 2 accounts. And they only are logged into their administrator account when they're making changes that require that privilege. Does that make sense? So for most of you, you are administrators. And what that means is you're opening your computer up to potential viruses, to potential changes, because you're already logged in. Now, we don't need to get into all these, but there's a bunch of specific accounts that allow users on the computer to do certain things. Backup operators being one. This is someone who can back up the computer. Do we want every user logged into the computer to have the ability to back up the computer and take that backup with them? No, that would be a huge security feat. There's also this idea of a guest account. Now, by default now, it used to be the guest account was turned on by default. In XP, the guest account was there. So you got a new computer, you created your own account. I could get in by just typing guest. Is that a good thing? No. What was the guest account used for? Anybody know? The guest account was an account that gave someone access to the computer so that they could use it with very minimal privileges. So you could even go in and say, all the guest account can do is go to the internet. They can't click on Word. They can't use Excel. They could just go to the internet. Okay. But the guest account was a temporary account if you turned it on that someone could use your computer. So important to understand accounts and credentials. Okay. Now in a corporate environment, we may go further in saying, in order to access this computer, not only do you need to have a username and password, but you need to have a smart card that you would swipe, you know. So I need 2 pieces of identification to get into my account. An example of that was, how many people use Google, use Gmail? How many people have Gmail? So how many people use the second level authentication for Gmail? Just me? Yeah, there goes a great example of being a computer nerd. So the second level of authentication is a thing where when I today logged into this computer, I needed to be in my Google account to start our Google Live presentation, this idea of sharing this. By getting into this, what it did is when I logged into my Gmail or my Google account, it said, okay, you're on a computer I don't recognize. I want to make sure it's you. So I had to put in my initial password, and then what it did is it sent my phone, it texted my phone a 6-digit code that I then had to get in as a second level of authentication. You know, is it more trouble? Yeah, it's not as convenient. But what if one of you got my Gmail password? Would that be a good thing? How many people use their Gmail to have their bank send them notifications, private information through your Gmail? You know, how many of you would be comfortable giving me, well, let's not use me, giving anyone in the room their Facebook username and password? How many people would do that? Great. Huh? See, that's why you'd give it out, because you don't use it. So appearance and personalization, remember how we right-clicked on the desktop to customize our computer? We can do it through here. Here's that clock and language. Now, we can't change any of these settings, okay? That will hold, but, you know, unable to continue, so I can't show you that. But if for some reason our date and time was off, we could change it. We can change our time zone. So if we went to another time zone, unlike my phone, which knows the time zone because it's getting the time information from the nearest cellular tower, okay, my computer doesn't. So if I want to use it in a different time zone, I'm going to go in and pick that time zone, okay? So, you know, get more information on time. Now, you know, regional and language settings, yes, I can go in and change things like, what date format do I want to see? What format of language do I want to use? Many language packs. You want to force yourself to learn a new language? Change the language on your computer and then figure out how to change it back without learning the language. You know, ease of access. So things like, you know, things for the vision challenged, hearing impaired. Again, if you notice, ease of access has speech recognition in there. So remember I said speech recognition was in the computer? Here it is. So we can start doing speech recognition. If you're interested in speech recognition, if you go out, by the way, if you want to go out to, I'll go to Google. If you go out to YouTube and you type in my account, EJ Magidson, you can get to my channel and watch videos. If you notice, I'm live now. Did you see that? So we're recording this now, so you can get in, you know, and watch videos. Some of them you'll find interesting. Maybe you need to create a chart in Excel or do the payment formula. I have a bunch of videos out here. One happens to be speech. Let's see if Speech Rec will pull it up. I can't remember what I called it. It's been so long since I did it. I'll find it maybe.
At the bottom.
There it is. So here's a video I did for a class. Not this one.
Hello, fellow teaching professionals. Capitalize that. New line. My name is Eric Magidson, and I am a computer information systems instructor at Central Oregon Community College in Bend, Oregon. Period. Capitalize community. Capitalize college. Correct Bend. One. Okay. Space. Today I wanted to introduce Microsoft Speech Recognition, a program that is available in the Windows operating system.
So that's been built into the operating system since Vista, that we could actually talk to the computer. Now, why do you think if it's been built in, more people aren't using it? Dragon Natural Speaking is a third-party software that does this exact same thing. Okay, and it gained notoriety. Okay, that's one reason. The other reason is because back then we didn't have the immense processing power, the memory. You can see that as I did this video on a powerful computer, you see how long it took to type the line, right? So it's having to process my voice. First of all, I have to train it to do it, and it processes my voice. But you get the idea that it has been built in, and it is useful. And the more powerful computer, the faster it goes. I can literally write. I have written full papers without touching the keyboard. You know, why? Because I broke my finger and typing was annoying, you know, and then I thought, oh, well, they have this thing, this voice recognition. I wonder if it works. So I actually had to learn to use it from necessity. Okay, so there's enough about that. Why don't we go ahead? I'm going to stop sharing. And why don't we go ahead? We'll take 5 minutes. We'll come back and we'll jump into hardware. Cool?